Imagine, your plane touches down in Brisbane. You've just come off a 2-week stint working in Moranbah on the development of the new coal mine. Your child comes bounding up to you with great revelations of what has been decided in your absence. It goes something like this. When I grow up, I want to be just like you. I want to be an engineer. I want to build big, tall skyscrapers that go all the way up into the sky, and that's where the birds fly, so they have to go all the way up there. And I want all my friends to live in those skyscrapers. And I also want to build bridges, and when I build those bridges, I'm going to drive across those bridges every day in my car. I'm also going to build a house right across the road from Nanny and Pop. And I want my sister to go and live in California, because that's where we went on holidays when we went to Disneyland, remember? And that way, when I'm not building my bridges, well then I can go to California and I can go to Disneyland. Does any of that sound like a bad idea to you? Does any of that sound like I'm talking about a son and his father? Well, what if I told you that that story is actually about a mother and her daughter? Besides shipping the sister off to California, I'm not really sure that any part of that scenario is a bad idea. Now, I'm kind of involved with that scenario because while I don't build the bridges, I do work in the construction industry, and I've worn my high vis today just to make that point. So in the construction industry, while I don't build the bridges, I do help the guy who builds the bridges get paid for building those bridges. And I do try to help everyone to stay friends during the construction of the bridge. So after it's all done, everyone can move on with the project and stay friends. When I go to work, I sit in a 17.1% pool of equity partners who are female. I provide advice and services to the construction industry, where women make up an 11.7% stake. I call this a double whammy, because I'm a minority in a minority. Now this is my dad. And yes, that is me on his back. And yes, that is a tape measure between his teeth. Now, for all of you dads out there in the audience, don't try to pretend with me that you haven't done a horsey ride or two in your time. And for all the girls that are out there, I'm sure that you have travelled many places on the back of your father. I travelled many places on the back of my father, and he carried me many places. And while I was on his back, the view wasn't as much about showing what the world could offer me, but what I had to offer the world. Now, as the president of an industry body like Women in Construction, I can tell you that if your daughter chooses a career in construction, the boy next door actually has prospects of being paid $9,000 more than your daughter. So this is starting salaries in construction straight out of university. The gender pay gap stands at $9,000. Once your daughter is in that role, if she aspires to an executive position, the boy next door actually has a 9 times better chance of being appointed to an executive position than your daughter. If your daughter aspires for a CEO position, she'll have her work cut out for her, because for the top 50 companies in Australia, the CEO positions are only filled by 2 females, and the rest of the positions are filled by men. These are not great odds, and if you want these odds to be different for your daughter and for her daughter, well then, men in the audience, I need you to raise your daughters to lead. This is me down the front there in the groovy sunglasses, and that's the neighbour's kid up the back with the other pink circle. If him and I were to start our law degrees today, or start straight out of our law degrees, there would be a difference in our starting salary of $4,300. In fact, law comes third after architecture and building as the areas with the largest gender pay gap. So, men, if your daughter chooses a career in construction, do you think that there should be any difference between what she is paid and what the boy next door is paid? In high school, I decided that I had 3 choices in respect of what career I would take. The first 2 choices were to be a teacher and to work in childcare, and the third choice was to work in law. I trotted off to the careers advisor to have a chat about these options and was promptly told that I should really concentrate my efforts on the more realistic options of working in childcare or being a teacher. And there was plenty of reasons why this advice that was given to me was good advice and that law was a bad choice for me. Law was a bad choice for me because I had no lawyers in my family. In fact, I had railway in my blood. My dad worked the railway, my uncle worked the railway, my dad's dad worked the railway, and my mum's dad worked the railway. And as you can see in this picture, my neighbour also worked in the railway. So the other reason why law was a bad choice for me was because when I was in high school, I worked at the discount department store, folding undies in the school holidays. Law was also a bad choice for me because, I tried really hard at school and I was good at school, but I was no girl genius. The reason why law was a good choice for me was because it was my choice. And if I chose it and I wanted it, I could absolutely do it. I think that giving choices or showing choices to your children is one of the most important jobs a parent has. So, how do you do this job? Well, I can't really give any advice from a parent's perspective, but from the child's perspective, my experience with my dad, I can tell you that my dad showed me choices by making success feel so good. I can't remember every time my dad told me that he was proud of me, but I do remember how good he made trying for success and success feel. When others ask me about the things that they say make me successful and how I've been able to achieve these things, my dad comes to mind to me. I truly believe that it is because and through how good he made success feel that I have been able to keep going and keep showing up and do the things that I do. My dad created in me little ripples of pride that have carried me on a great wave of success to where I am today. I'm talking to the dads in the audience today because that is where I see the greatest capacity for influence. While things such as profits, promotions, and pay rises are still determined by fathers, they have the greatest capacity and the greatest influence to see the gender pay gap close, to see women appointed into CEO positions, and to offer women a seat at the table. It is the opinions, habits, and consciousness of fathers that, if we shift, we can undertake, I believe, the most rapid transformation in the shortest amount of time. I have no doubt that the boardroom of corporate Australia needs to change, but I think that if we're going to change the corporate boardroom, if we're going to bring about any substantial change, well then we need to change the way we address each other around the kitchen table. It's around the kitchen table that the future leaders of this country will be made, and it is around the kitchen table that we can change the minds of anyone who doesn't already realise that girls and boys should have the same choices. If your daughter is offered the opportunity to work in an area such as construction or law, the consideration shouldn't be what she has to offer those fields. It shouldn't be what the commercial case is for her full participation. The only consideration should be, the most important consideration, is that it is her choice and it's what she wants. If that is her choice, then why should that choice ever be refused? 15 years ago, I made the choice to start a law degree at JCU in Townsville. And when I started that law degree, I studied a subject called feminist jurisprudence. Now, back then, I had absolutely no idea what a feminist was, and I had even less of an idea of what jurisprudence was. But in first year law, having no idea was a pretty common occurrence for me, so that didn't worry me all too much. What I did learn in that subject is that the first woman to ever complete a law degree was refused admission as a solicitor. She was refused admission as a solicitor not because she failed any subjects or her grades weren't up to scratch, not because she failed to meet any of the criteria for admission, but because at the time she was not considered a person. You see, the law at the time provided only that a person could be admitted to practice law. And the definition of a word person was said not to include a woman. It was at this time that it dawned on me that I was actually a woman studying law and not just a law student. Fathers, if you want to raise your daughters to lead, like my father, you can be proud of the times that your daughter not only is successful, but tries for success. I never for a moment thought that my dad was proud of my achievements as a girl. I never for a moment thought that there was any difference between the achievements of myself or my brother. During university, my university days, my dad was actually mad for watering the yard. He liked nothing better than the North Queensland sunshine, out watering the yard. It was his favourite pastime. During my exam period, I'd be upstairs in my room studying, and I could feel him through the wall out there daydreaming about all the success I would have and the worries that I would be spared that he had by studying hard. He would call past my room during the day just to pop in and see how it was all going. And this, I think, was pretty much the highlight of his day. When it came exam time, he was at the door waiting with keys, tossing them around, ready to take me to my exams. I swear he would do laps of the university waiting till I was finished so that he could pick me up and be the first to ask me how it went. He continued this right up until my last year of university when I was a 22-year-old woman, and he would still show up to pick me up after my exams. At the time, I thought nothing of it at all, just a break from all the yard watering, really. But now I realise that this is how he made success feel good. This is how he created the little ripples of ambition inside me that created the wave that I ride on today. When I moved away from home to gain admission as a solicitor, because I could in 2003, because women were considered people in 2003, my dad invested in a little something called free talk time. So the first 6 months that I was away from home, this free talk time allowed my father to call me every night without fail at 8 o'clock. That first 6 months that I spent away from home was the hardest 6 months of my entire life, but it was even harder for my dad. I swear the day I was admitted was the proudest day of my dad's life. The year that I was admitted was also the year that my dad was diagnosed with cancer. He was 50 and I was 23. I'll never forget that day in the courtroom, the pride on his face, and that pride is ingrained in my memory forever. It was only after my dad passed away that I realised that he had actually been changing his roster so that he was on night shift during my exam times. I know it sounds silly now, but I didn't realise it at the time. I didn't realise it because he never told me. I didn't realise it because he never wanted me to feel grateful for it. I never realised because all the times that he would pick me up and ask me how it went, and I would just grunt at him, he never said anything. I now realise, now that he has passed away, that the reason why he was doing that was because he wanted to ride with me, and he never wanted me to show up for anything alone. That's how he created the ripples. That's how he made success feel good. Fathers, you have the greatest capacity to influence this wave. If you want your daughters to have choices, then you must provide choices for your colleagues. Mother Teresa said, "Never worry. Help one person at a time, and start with the person nearest to you." Now, I'm no Mother Teresa, and neither was my dad, but I think that she is right. She is absolutely correct. If we want to change these numbers, we shouldn't get hung up on the numbers. If we want to change these numbers, we should start with one person. We should start with the person nearest to us. And fathers, you should start with your daughters. Thank you.